kind of scary to read, actually. And I think if you've done something like this for this long, it's the triumph of optimism over experience, which is what Churchill said about second marriages, but that's another story. How many folks here are in operations? So we should be setting up a support group after this? Yeah, there's a lot of school of hard knocks here, and what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is way more people-centric. And it's about some small victories that yielded some pretty solid results, and that's about as much as we could hope for. You'll hear in the discussion, and I'll bring it up repeatedly, very jealous of the deal track folks and the IBM story. We're just way less mature, way less functional. Very dysfunctional, actually. The culture of blame is rampant. It's a very challenging environment to get anything collaborative done. So I'm very happy to share, and these are good war stories. You're looking here at the lovely psych building at Kings County, where I spent, not as a patient, but I spent a lot of time. Spent 11 years at Kings County as a consultant, functionally running their support operations environment, which was paper tickets and people running around frantically when I started there in 2003. That's where are we facing? It's that way, about an hour from here on a good subway day. Let's get right into it. So Health and Hospitals, or Health and Hospitals Corporation in the past, we decided to rename it for some reason, but now it's Health and Hospitals. Essentially, it's the city's hospital healthcare network. A lot of you are familiar with Bellevue, with Kings County, with Jacoby. When you hear there's an officer shot, they're going to one of our hospitals. You'll also hear in the news that I believe Kings County trains the Army Reserve before they go overseas. A lot of gunshot trauma type of wounds and care there. And functionally, it's the healthcare system of last resort. You've got 1 million patient care visits. You've seen these ads if you're a city person or if you commute around the city. You'll see all these fantastic ads. The bottom line is it's 11 acute care facilities, 11 major hospitals, and about 150 plus clinics. And I'll talk to you about it from the IT perspective mostly, but as I said, I spent 11 years at Kings County. Some of the time I was in there putting in systems and working on virtualization projects in the emergency department, listening to things go on. You get a little bit better perspective, and one of the cultural issues I'll talk to you guys about is the difference between corporate IT and the real world that the providers and your customers live in. And the gap between it is enormous in some cases. Maybe some of you have the same experience, but like I said, I'm not going to talk to you about anything overly dramatic or fantastic from a tools perspective. I'm jealous of pretty much all of you here for what you can pull off and develop and that type of thing. We were much more limited. So let's get into that a little bit. We have a lot of really cool marketing stuff. I can recite these for you, but I don't think there's a lot of value there. A lot of these things don't apply to IT, as a matter of fact, as I look at this. So let's talk a little bit about the overall enterprise. There's about in between 40 and 45,000 employees in health and hospitals. It's a big environment. Like I said, we've got somewhere to the tune of that we manage maybe around 175 sites. All in all, we also manage the Department of Corrections, which, yes, is Rikers Island and all the fabulous places you've heard so much about. They're part of the infrastructure we manage. There's about 900 IT associates, and as I mentioned, 11 acute care facilities, 1 million patient visits per year. It's a big place. There's never a downtime. There's never a good window. There's never a time when you're not waiting for the phone to ring. On the operations side, it's a very challenging environment. So let's talk a little bit about what I came in to do. Like I said, I ran, functionally, I ran operations for Kings County, which was probably the second biggest facility in the environment. Maybe 5,000-6,000 folks there. Again, level 1 trauma, tons of stuff going on there at all times. It was a forefront technology player. We virtualized 7 or 8 years ago. It's virtualized desktops. We had major upgrades to network and technology, and we also implemented a full set of idle processes and tools. We were a CA shop. We rolled everything out on top of what was paper. So we did a fairly good job, and it was a model that wanted to be emulated by the corporation. What IT decided to do, corporate IT, which is down there, they decided that what they were going to do was collapse everything. This may be a familiar story to some of you. So we had 11 functional IT groups. They all did their own things. They all modified whatever they wanted to. They all had their own tools. They all had their own processes. Nobody talked to anybody. It was a fabulous environment. So they decided that all of a sudden they were going to do something wonderful. They were going to collapse everything into one central IT, collapse all the tools and technology at once, and they were going to collapse all the EHR systems, electronic health record systems, into one, all at the same time. So it was something that hadn't been done before, so why not try it here? So I was brought into corporate. I was taken out of the consulting world and brought in as a full-time employee to create the Enterprise Operations Center. And the concept there was to consolidate all the tools, all the technology, all the processes, and support the environment, in a nutshell. All right, and we'll get into a little bit of what that meant. In the past, what we inherited was a network operations center where it was staffed by CCIEs. And these guys were good. They built everything. They knew every alert that came in. They could look at the screen and say, yep, that router I installed it 3 weeks ago, and yeah, I know why that alert's happening, just ignore it. Okay, great. That, from a process standpoint, it's fantastic. Nothing to do. It created an auto ticket. The auto tickets, we had probably somewhere to the tune of about 50,000 a month, and they auto-closed them at the end. It was great. No metrics, no reporting, no accountability, no nothing. The network stayed up pretty well, though, so that was fantastic. The end result justified the means. No, like I said, no process, no escalations, no anything, and yeah, if you give me a staff of 15 CCIEs, I can pretty much keep lots of things running. All good stuff. So with the collapse of everything into one, the Network Operations Center turned into the Enterprise Operations Center in the space of about 2 weeks. So essentially what happened was everything was collapsed into one. Instead of it just being network, and by the way, they took all the CCIEs out, and I took folks from each facility, field engineers. I mean, these were good guys, good people, good, dedicated. They lived in the trenches. They knew what it meant when an application was down. They knew what the impact was, right? But they had absolutely no idea about any of the technology or the environment. But we took on servers. There were about 4,000 biomedical devices. That means that if I have a ventilator or a pump that's maintaining a patient, if that pump goes down, if that vent goes down, an alert could happen from there. There was monitoring, telemetry technology and tools in place. Everything into one happy operations center and applications, of which we had about 1,900. That's a lot of applications. But don't forget, we had 11 hospitals, and they all had their own purchasing. And in my next life, I want to come back as a sales guy to H&H. That is my objective. If I could pull that off, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be working. But basically, this was absolutely the most immature model in the world. It reminded me of my 14-year-old son and his sense of humor. It just there's no maturity there whatsoever. And that doesn't change either. I'm 53 and I can state that definitively. So basically I came on board roughly April Fool's Day, which I think is appropriate. And we had, at the time, we had network and network infrastructure only. That was it. CCIEs, no ticketing, big screen. They actually had a bitmap that changed colors. It was bizarre. But functionally, there was nothing, nothing being done with the tools and the process. And I'd answer the question about what tool would you have if you only could have one tool, and it's ticketing process, accountability, governance, measuring, making sure people do what they're supposed to. That was absolutely missing at H&H. So, like I said, we had auto tickets with no escalations, nobody using them, nobody working them, nobody documenting anything. but ticketing is absolutely core to everything that we do today. So today, about 150 locations, all the LAN, WAN, wireless, wide area, everything that you could think of in terms of the networking. Department of Corrections, I mentioned all the different pieces here. There are 9 separate EHR systems right now. They're being collapsed, but even with the collapse, there's still 9 separate. I'll give you an idea of the sales money that could be made there. Biomedical devices, environmental, the VDI infrastructure, which is growing by leaps and bounds. Great strides there, and that's really starting to pay off. LRS is a printing environment. Ensemble is a messaging system between, we send messages to all the different health systems, all the different governmental systems, interchanges between hospital and providers. Saurian is, for those of you, anybody here in healthcare? Because if you are, you know all these names. These are industry standard things for the most part. We also managed about 2,500 cameras and video surveillance. Physical security, just as a tangent, physical security for hospitals is critical. You have radioactive materials. I'd say 70% of the staff are female. A lot of these hospitals are in awful areas. So physical security, it winds up being a tremendously important system, and we monitored those as well. I'll pass this, but this is a pretty big change, right? That's the point here. So the problem that we had was information and scale. I was bringing in, like I said, field. Some of these techs were brilliant. Some of them were excellent resources, but none of them had the background. Documentation, as you can imagine, was non-existent. Nobody knew what was built. When people left, they were, I think it was asked before, as a CMDB. We used to have walking CMDBs. And they walked, you'd lose all the knowledge. The knowledge was tribal, not institutional. There was no record of what had been done. When a server went down, the mantra there was, it's not if you win or lose, it's where you place the blame. Enterprise operations was the #1 stop on the chain for blame. Why didn't you notify me about that alert? Well, if I knew it was your server, I'd be happy to. Why are you notifying me about that alert? I don't know the application. I just put the server there. Talk to the application guys. Well, who are they? I don't know. They're gone. Great. This is what we were dealing with. So like I said, this isn't the sexiest presentation, but we decided, and it was act of desperation, but we needed to latch onto something with a common language, common terminology. They'd purchased Remedy years ago, and it was only incident management, essentially, at the time. But IDLE was a good construct, only because the terms are consistent. There's a way you can say, and yeah, I've had that same argument about incident. Brilliant way of wasting time and deflecting and not getting any work done. But an incident, basically, it's something's broken. It's not providing the service it's supposed to. You got to restore it. You know, a problem people started to understand. When stuff happens over and over again, you probably ought to identify it and fix it. These were basic concepts for groups that were mom and pop shops. They got away with doing this for years and years and years. But when you start to go to a shared services model, you can't pull it off. You can't do it. You can't scale to what the demand was. So essentially, the EOC became a secondary owner of incident management and problem management. We decided to run with it. We were the guys being penalized because stuff would repeat. So we decided that we would do these things. We would run these things. We were a participant in everything, and we were a process enforcer every chance we got. When somebody would, invariably, we would shoot ourselves in the foot through the top of our heads by making changes that were never documented, never announced. You know, changes were just, yeah, I decided to patch oh yeah, I added this to the application. I don't need to tell anyone because I'm in my own little vacuum. IT and corporate, and I'm not sure if this is something you guys share, but IT and corporate had absolutely no understanding of what the business was. They didn't care or care what happened in the trenches when patients were being affected. And this is, like I said, this is a people discussion. This is not a technology discussion. So from start to finish, you can see there's metrics. This came out of the ticketing system and goes back about a year, which is, it took about a year to get the technology and the process in place so that tickets were being created and that we could beat on people when they didn't respond. We started to, the question before about who has a CMDB, we have one. It's a checkbox, we completed it. No. We have a CMDB that's functional for a limited scope because as was just said, you start small, you start realistic. We started with servers and applications and we mapped the top 100, then the top 200, then the top 500. I just want to know how many servers there are for this EHR. Nobody could tell me. So we started with achievable, which is, I think, a core piece to my discussion. We were idle in name only. We had remedies, so we must have been idle. We have processes, we have a run book, we have a swim lanes. Nobody followed it. So this was, we wanted to be real world. And I think the core, I'll get to it, the core concept here is there's a maximum achievable endpoint. You have to understand the culture of the environment, the people. We have every tool on the planet. Like I said, if I could sell it, I'd love to be on that side. We have every tool. Name one, we have it. I mean, probably. Or we have it and we shelved it and never got it installed. So just the summary here, and I'll go back to that point in a second. The volume increase was dramatic. We took on way, way more because we had this EOC now. We can throw everything at it. We got somebody we could blame. New projects, major initiatives, continuously added. So we collapsed our AD into one domain. We decided we'd upgrade PeopleSoft. We decided we'd implement Epic. Name it, we did it. Windows 10, sure, why not? The old process, there was a very limited process, but it was basically the network guys saying it's not us. Okay? So there was constant disagreement about how to proceed and where to focus, and that was endemic to the organization. It's a culture of blame, a culture of silos. In a lot of ways, and I'm a government employee, but you know, in a lot of ways, it's all about I do my thing, I get out of there, and then I leave. Right? It was not a collaborative team effort about, you know, let's keep the applications up. It was, it's not me. I don't have to fix this. It's you. You did it. So that was, and unfortunately, it's reality. So it's how do you solve some of this stuff? How do you get to something tangible? So there was a reality here, and the only reality that became apparent, and there was a number of major issues that occurred to the point where there was investigations, there were fines, there were a lot of issues, state reviews. Outages cost lives. And it's fairly dramatic, but it's absolutely true. And in this case, this is an example of an X-ray not being able to be processed, the radiology system not transmitting. That means that you go to you take a patient, you can't see where the gunshot wound is, you can't see where the break is because you can't read the images. So we put them to another hospital. That does two things. Number one, it's deferring revenue, which people care about. The second thing is that time could cost someone their life, and it has. The other things that we'd seen is that when there were systems down in terms of some of the single sign-on technology, people would badge in with the wrong badge. That meant the prescriptions routed to the different provider. There were cases, and you guys can read it in the papers. I'm not going to tell you what to Google exactly, but you could. You'll see that there were patients that were medicated incorrectly. And this is real stuff. So outages costing lives was just about the only thing that people could really, you know, kind of get around, and it gave us a little bit of ammunition to make some changes. So our approach was we had to identify our goals. What were our goals? I mean, in a nutshell, not, you know, monitor everything or not, you know, instrument everything, for example. Understand the model and understand the environment and culture. That third point, absolutely the biggest issue that we had. The most important, most significant issue that we had to face was what can we actually achieve? Given what we have, not what we don't have. I mean, we had every vendor on the planet telling us if you just install our software, it will fix all of this. I've never heard that before. But it will fix it, will reduce, it will, you know, correlate, it will do all these magical things. All you got to do is install it. We got professional services too, by the way. But there's a maximum achievable outcome that you can have. So there's absolutely no magic here. The biggest thing I think that we realized was that we weren't going to be able to do everything. Even if we had the money, even if we had all the people, even if we had groups that were working together collaboratively, we still weren't going to be able to, and we didn't. So we still had to understand what we could achieve. And nutshell, I summarized our mission, our goal in contributing to the environment as reduce the outages, reduce the outage durations. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. Just reduce how many outages there were and reduce how long they occur. And in order to do that second one, reduce outages to me is a problem management function primarily, and we got decent at it. Not good, not even great, but decent. We recognized there was a process. We brought people together. We made people work together. And we actually achieved some things, so that I'll leave that alone for now, but the reducing the outage durations was formulaic to me. And what we had to do is we had to break things into, call it a stream, call it just the lifespan or a life cycle of an incident. And there's a time to detect, and that's monitoring. And there's tons of good tools out there. Like I said, we own most of them. There's good stuff out there. And like we said earlier, actually twice, you can monitor everything. You can have a million events. You can blind people to it. Effective monitoring is difficult, but it's not impossible. We had the tools there in place. The problem that we had was we didn't know what to do with that. And again, you give me CCIEs, you give me the people that constructed the applications, I'll do well. Didn't have those guys. So time to understand the problem, then pointedly the time to find and coordinate the right people. So this is all an outage, right? It's down. How long does it take you to figure it out, to detect it? How long does it take you to understand what the issue is so you can get it to the right people? How long does it take you to get the right people? Time to fix the issue to me is a constant. If I get the right engineer in front of something, they'll fix it. I don't worry about that. I don't think I can improve that all that well. Can I do that up front? Sure. Can I do that better first call close, or can I do it at tier 1 as opposed to engineering and development? Yeah, I hope so, but let's leave that alone. Let's call that a constant for right now. So, and this approach, and coming from the consulting world, I built quite a few NOCs. I'd done a lot of managed services. It didn't matter what the environment was. I was told, well, healthcare IT is different. No, it's not. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's insurance. These are systems. They go down. They affect people. The model worked. It didn't matter what it was. So I presented that to management, and there was a lot of heads nodding in the room. A lot of people had come from different areas, but in my history, it really didn't matter. A lot of focus in the earlier days was spent on the tools. Everybody wanted to get OpenView. Everybody wanted to have NetView or CA or whatever. CA with the flying things through 3D windows and all kinds of cool stuff. But it really didn't make much difference, because at the end of the day, if you didn't know what to do with that information, it was useless. It was functionally useless. Your time, you'd know about it faster, but you wouldn't know how to fix it any better. So this was our decision. This is where we decided to focus. We decided to focus on something achievable, nothing more. Big stuff. I mean, CMDB, how many of them failed? 95%? As a project, end-to-end, service mapping, everything auto-discovered all at once? Nah, it don't work. Wait, sorry, I need my vendor hat on. It works with auto-discovery and all this cool stuff. Functionally, it's a bear. It's just nasty stuff to do. It's repeated calling people. It's how come you didn't tell us you were changing that? It's really growing up. We decided to focus on something reasonable there with the servers and the application mapping to the servers. Basic processes, incident problem change knowledge. We had remedy, wasn't being used, but we had remedy, and we decided to start holding cabs or participating more heavily. We decided to have our own problem management calls, and we decided to get very involved in terms of incident management from a process standpoint. The other piece was the time to coordinate. We owned Alarm Point for many years, probably 5 or 6 years. Wasn't used. When I saw the X Matters product, I realized I could do something that I couldn't do with Alarm Point, which is I could get people to self-manage. I could get them onto a nice, easy-to-use web portal. They could put in their team. They could manage. I could put the responsibility on them. I don't have the cycles for that. I'm running operations 24/7. You could see that I'm out of my mind for taking the job. But essentially, I had no time to manage the list. I had no time to ask, hey, John, are you on this weekend? I called you, you weren't there. I had people telling me, listen, call me on my cell, right? But if I don't answer that, call my buddy, because I'm going to be over there tonight. How am I supposed to manage it? I don't have time to do that. So The notification process was a significant issue because if you know what the problem is, you just need the right people, maybe the right 2 or 3 or 4 people, different groups. I need the SQL guys, I need the VM guys, I need the storage guys. I need their on-calls right now. I cannot expect my guys, with 900 people in IT, they're handling, on a good month, 40,000 events a month. There is no event correlation, there is no event management, it's them deduplicating. The original counts, before the 40,000 come into the console, were over 1 million. Some months there were 3 million. Insane. It's insane. So can I ask them to call and leave Scott a message, and if Scott doesn't pick up, well, call him back again in 5 minutes? Impossible. Impossible. It might sound kind of like a small point, but it was a very large part of the problem. I can't get people on the phone properly if I don't have a tool to do that. And we had the tool. The question was asked before, how did I justify the expenditure? I didn't have to. It was already budgeted. We just renewed it year after year without doing anything. So I was able to justify it pretty easily. The next year was easier because we had success. But these 2 elements were the only thing we decided to focus on. All right, so knowing the culture, knowing that we could not affect the monitoring group. They were a separate group. They didn't like us too much because we made them look bad and they made us look bad. There was a lot of blame going, how come you didn't catch that alert? Stop sending me 40,000. Short conversation. Just a lot of finger pointing and blame. Useless, but reality. So we said, okay, send us 40,000, we'll do our best as we do every month. However, I'm gonna invest in the CMDB. A lot of it was service history. First of all, I had to, and I spent a lot of time doing this personally, training the guys as to what the theory was. You get an event, it's a server, what's the server do? Well, that's part of the radiology system. That sounds like it's important. Yes, it is. Context, it's a big deal. I'm going to walk you through that. I think that's another slide. Yes, look at that. Hey, CMDB slide. You can see this is what the auto discovery magically does for you. Doesn't. But this is, I don't know, the visual representation for me does nothing. It was always, I have this service. What are the servers that are part of it? And who supports it? Simple, right? That should be for everything. It didn't exist, not even on paper. It was in a SharePoint at one of the facilities and it was out of date. So just doing that made it very simple to understand. And you can see how many groups are there. That's real stuff. That system, that Bernoulli system, is a system that monitors ventilators, and it actually flashes a light and calls a nurse if a patient's having difficulty or the vent stops functioning. It's a big deal. But it wasn't documented. There's 2 vendors in there as well. No vendor information, no contract information. What's the number I call? When can I call it? That's the information my guys did not have. This was not easy. I got very lucky. They reorganized and took one of my guys out of the picture, but they left him in my group. He was a great CMDB guy. They didn't know it. I didn't tell them either. So I put him and a couple of younger kids that had just come on. I put them on documenting. They spent a year doing this, and it was worth every penny of the time, every penny and the time that they spent on it. So really, this was my core theory of the operational side of it, which is you have to understand the context. I don't care. I don't care if it's a payroll system, if it's after hours, because there's nobody using it. So just understanding, and I spoke a little bit about the institutional versus tribal and awareness of what changes are going on. When a ticket comes in, when an incident's created, I look up what the device is, what's gone wrong with it before. Service history being the most important piece of that. I look to see if there's any changes going on that anyone's cared to document. Those are the things that really help focus and make things more effective. I'm going to move a little quicker. I know we're running out of a little time. But the CMDB for us was a living Bible. It became so highly used that during deployments, we were doing a large deployment and they wanted to focus on dev servers. They gave us the list to validate. There were 18 production servers in their list. So these are the types of things that, again, worth the effort. So let's talk about coordinating the response. And we just heard about subscriptions. One of the biggest hits that we would take is you didn't notify the right people. Okay, well, I've got a system that affects 15 different areas that's comprised of servers, storage, SQL, the application, the vendor, the facilities people, the folks that are owning it, and the providers that use it. How am I supposed to manage that? I can't even get a phone number for most of the people that I have on the team. Self-service, subscriptions. My point to the CIO was, you can't yell at me anymore. You subscribe or you don't. I don't care what you do, but if you don't subscribe, you're not going to get notified. If you get if you have more information than you need, so be it. Take yourself off the list. Here's the link. It's got a forgotten password thing on it too. Very, very, very important, critical. And then shift management. This is a typical shift from my EOC. Different tours, different people. We used it religiously, and it helped us manage our resources better. It helped understand who was on call effectively, and we've pushed that out to most of the engineering groups. We're actually using this now for alert notifications, and we don't have the blessing of an integration team or an engineering team, development team. Our ticketing system is still functionally separate from X-Matters today. But it's still effective for my guys. It's a button. They fill in the information that they put in the incident. It'll be integrated in the future. But that was a huge time savings for us. So I won't read you all this stuff. I think you guys will get a copy of this. But effectively what it did was it reduced the time to notify people dramatically. And that was a big savings. We had months where we had 60 hours of bridge time. So that gives you an idea. Yeah, it's just, I know you feel sorry for me now. So, benefits and results. The time to actually initiate resolutions on a major incident or technical bridge, over 70%, which tells you we were terribly ineffective before. But that was an easy win. I get people on the phone, and we were talking about it earlier. You get the notification, you press the button, you're on the call. Phenomenally important for most of our folks that are commuting. They're obviously driving and texting or whatever else they're doing. But it was just a dramatic decrease in the time it took to get people on the phone. You get them on the phone faster, you fix it faster, your outages are less. The workload and stress on resources reduced. Instead of me blasting an email out and getting 15 guys from the same group on the phone, I'm getting the one on-call person. If they're not responding, it's going up the chain. Automatic escalations and extremely good tracking was a very nice function. Service history. Our folks were able to resolve the issues because they could see what happened before. Simple stuff. Restart the service, but do it in this order. Don't restart the service, call the vendor. These are just simple wins that investment really provided for us. And then I mentioned I tend to, I guess, steal my own thunder here. But the CMDB was used to validate system statuses. As we started to do production roles, we found out, or development first roles, we found that many of the systems were in prod already. So these were potentially large-scale impacts that we avoided. And then it's never done. No, it's not. And we could talk about the difference between the bridges, and I'm a huge fan of keeping the management staff off the technical bridge. We had the same VP sitting in our knock yelling at people and trying to fix stuff. That was thrilling. That was very helpful. But we spent a lot of time on the documentation and socialization of what the processes were. You can see here that we focused on the technical bridge was, actually this is a much newer version. We actually thought that our technical bridge would be spun up first, and then we'd spin off the stakeholder bridges. Never worked out that way. So we revised our process. We said, okay, the major incident bridge will be a stakeholder bridge. The technical guys will go off on their own bridges, and they'll report back every 10 minutes. And it was very helpful for us. And again, these are things we could talk about more. The thing we just added was, with our systems, downtimes need to be coordinated. If you go to a downtime process, you're on paper, you have to report to the state. In some cases, you have to defer patients, you have to do some not so great things. And then when it's back up, the outage isn't done when the systems are back up. The outage is done when you've tested everything and brought things back and reconciled. So downtimes are a big issue. We just added that to the process. And again, the point is it's never done, and that's for sure. And I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, we've got about maybe 5 minutes for questions. So any questions for Josh?
So I'm curious, when you think about the whole concept, what you guys did it actually improve your alert fatigue for your staff, and how did they handle the balance in their lives? Was it more proactive in trying to maintain things before the alert happens, or was it just kind of waiting to see if something broke?
The only thing that that helped that to any measure, any measurable degree, was the problem management. What we did was we resolved things faster, but it didn't stop them from breaking in the first place. The problem management process got decent, and that started to reduce outages. We used to do SCOM-based updates for client for some of these medical systems. Invariably, at the last minute, they'd hold off on the update from the vendor, but meanwhile, we push the new client out to everyone. So you're talking about 20 hours, techs being dispatched to manually pull stuff off machines. The problem management process uncovered a way we could get around that completely. That's just one example of many. That was the only thing that but where we stop those alerts, they continue, and I think somebody brought up earlier, they continue to bring in more systems. The monitoring team's sole focus, and this gives you an idea of not working towards a common goal, the monitoring team's sole focus is to bring more stuff on monitoring, not to fix, not to figure out how to make things better. So that helped, but it hasn't solved that problem. The alert fatigue is enormous right now.
Oh, wow.
I wish I had a better answer.
Any other questions? People getting hungry for lunch? Seen some nods. All right.